You're listening to Bigger Than Belief, real stories about real faith with real people whose belief is unbelievable. I'm your host, Adam Duxter. Thanks for listening to Bigger Than Belief. Today is Thursday, May 28th, and today we've got a really fun conversation waiting for you. I am excited to introduce this guest for a number of reasons, not limited to the fact that roughly 25 years ago, he was doing exactly what I'm doing right now, which is sharing faith stories on WCCO. Since then, Lino Rulli's career has taken him all over the world, and for the last 20 years to your XM radio dial, where he served as the host of the Catholic Guy show on Sirius's Catholic channel. Lino is seriously such a funny guy. It was hard not to laugh as we were having our conversation, truly. But he's also genuine and authentic in a way that's helped him build a dedicated global audience. On today's episode, we'll talk about his one-of-a-kind career journey, his personal faith story, and his thoughts on the Catholic Church as it stands today. But hey, before we dive into that conversation, I just want to say thank you again for listening to this show. It is not lost to me that we're nearing 6 months of doing this project, and I absolutely love the community that we're building here. Thank you so much to the nearly 100 of you that have given us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. That is absolutely massive and helps us push closer to the top charts. If you haven't done that yet, please take a moment to do just that. Right in the app, scroll down on the page where you see the option to click 5 stars and then just do that super fast, please. Again, it helps us so much. And hey, if Catholicism is your thing, this is an awesome episode to share with a friend. Also, you can find all the behind the scenes content and highlights from this episode on my social media pages. Right now, here is Lino Rulli. Well, now welcome on a very special guest, someone who I'm excited to talk to simply because you had essentially my job at WCCO.
So weird.
Decades before I did, but now you have taken it into a whole different avenue and found so much success being the Catholic guy. We're joined by Lino Rulli. Lino, thank you for making time for us. I know your schedule is just all over the place, both as a radio host and a relatively new dad.
I'm an old man. I'm 54, but a new dad. So that's what's keeping me busy.
You are the Catholic guy. I want to start by just understanding that and understanding your career because it is so fascinating to me. As I mentioned, you were me at WCCO back in the early 2000s. But for people who don't know your story or don't know your background, what should people know about you before we kind of dive into the meat and potatoes of our conversation?
I'm still trying to get to know me. That's why I'm in therapy. My therapist would be like, hey, don't find out too much about yourself or I'm not going to get paid. So in the early 2000s, I worked at CCO. I was called the Soul Man. So I did stories about religion. And that was a side gig. I actually hosted a TV show, too, at the time, which was a local Catholic TV show that ended up airing nationally. And it was this goofy show, because I'm a goofy guy, basically, where I would go rock climbing with priests, or I would go swing dancing with nuns, or I would do all these sort of odd, or you could call them normal things, with people you wouldn't expect to see doing these things, right? We had a cooking segment where a priest and I would cook an Italian meal every week. So we did all these things. So I was this local guy who was creating a lot of Catholic content. And then when I was at Channel 4 here, just all religions. So I was covering all religions. And I did that for like 6 years. And then eventually I moved to New York and worked for Sirius XM satellite radio as the Catholic guy.
Your faith journey starts way before that, though, right? I mean, when's the first time, if you think back in your life, that you can remember like connecting with your faith or just even knowing that your faith was a big part of your life?
Just as soon as I started getting paid. As soon as I started getting paid for this stuff, I said, wait a second, there's money in religion. Let's go.
Yeah.
I was born and raised Catholic. So like a lot of people born and raised in any type of a religion, my parents made me do things. My parents made me go to church. My mom more than my dad. Sometimes my dad would stay home and watch the Sunday news shows, right? So he'd be watching Face the Nation or he'd be watching Meet the Press. I'm like, how come you don't have to go to church, Pop? He's like, you'll understand when you're older. So, okay. So I would go to church. I can't say I was a good Catholic. I was an inquisitive Catholic. Now, I think as an adult, that makes me a good Catholic to be inquisitive. But I was always asking questions about religion, which would annoy my mom. My mom was my CCD teacher. I wasn't a knowledgeable kid, but I was an inquisitive kid. So I remember my mom one time at the class asking who was our first pope. My answer was Moses. So the answer for those keeping score at home was Peter.
Not Moses.
Not Moses, otherwise known as not Moses. That was Peter's nickname, not Moses. And so I don't remember until I was in 6th grade, and I was going to a public school at the time, but we had Good Friday off, and we went to church on Good Friday. And I remember thinking, oh, this isn't just a Sunday thing. Sometimes we do things for Jesus outside of Sundays. That's the first time I really remember my faith being a part of something other than what's called the Sunday obligation. I remember actually doing something with God, or you could call it for God, and it meaning something in my life. And then just like a lot of people, through my teens, early 20s, faith didn't really start meaning something to me until I needed something from faith. So it was, I hate to say it as a utilitarian thing, but as I started asking in college bigger questions about life and death and the meaning, and then I started looking at my Catholic faith as a place to answer those questions.
Did you think at the time, though, that you would be doing what you're doing now? Or was
God, no.
How did that come to be? Was it something where you feel like you kind of backed your way into it? Or how did you get to find this lane that you're in right now?
Horrible luck. So I always have loved broadcasting. I always loved TV and radio. When I was a kid growing up here in Minnesota, I loved listening to radio. I loved listening to this old station called WLOL, and they had a morning show I really liked called Hines and Berglund, and I used to love watching TV. I mean, I still love watching TV. I remember the first time I got an autograph from Don Shelby at the Minnesota State Fair. Like, I remember these things were very pivotal in my life. Broadcasting was always a big deal to me. When I was in college, I was a communications major, and I had an internship at a rival TV station. I don't know if we're okay saying other TV stations around here, but it was not CBS.
Okay.
And it was not ABC.
Okay.
And it was not PBS, and it was not Fox.
Interesting.
I don't know if that narrows it down.
I don't think there's any left.
There shouldn't be. I don't care if you get my point.
Okay.
So I was an intern. And I realized I was ugly. And I realized that because there's a lot of good-looking people in news. And so I was like, ooh, they might not let a big-nosed guy ever sit at the anchor desk. I'll have to be like a reporter or something like that. Nothing wrong with being a reporter, but everybody eventually wants to sit their butt down behind the desk and make $1 million a year.
Ugly. If I'm ugly, I can't be an anchor. I could just be a reporter.
That's what that was.
Yeah.
Don't take that the wrong way. But that's my big takeaway my junior year of college at my internship. There was this good-looking guy named Paul Majors who was making $1 million a year. And he sort of took me under his wing, and he's like, you're ugly, kid. And he really did take me under his wing. He didn't pronounce me being ugly. He didn't have to. It was we just looked in the mirror together. And so I realized, that isn't going to be my path. So I decided not to get into broadcasting. And I was like, what else is interesting to me? Theology. So I went and got a master's degree in theology. I thought maybe I'd be a teacher or a professor, or I'd work in ministry or something like that. Fast forward a few years, and I was looking for work, and somehow this weird combination of things came along at a church in downtown Minneapolis called St. Olaf Catholic Church, where they started broadcasting the Mass on a local TV station, and they were just looking for people to help out. And I was like, oh, well, I have a communications degree. I guess I can produce a Mass. Could you anything more boring visually than a Mass? It's like a 4-camera shoot, and it's all happening on the altar. And that turned into, have you ever thought about being on camera, in front of the camera? And I'm like, yeah, but I thought I was too ugly to. And they're like, to be an anchor, yes, but not to have your own show. So that's how it all started. Was you could just say was God's plan or God's will. It was not something I sought after. It was something I was avoiding. And then I just took my loves of broadcasting and theology and put them together.
Your Wikipedia page reads almost like you're trying to punk the people who are reading it, because
I don't make that Wikipedia page for the record.
I know you don't, but there was one point a mention of like the circus and being in the circus. There's another point of like you coaching a soccer team in the Bahamas, or like wanting to be a monk. Like, is all that stuff true too?
So my dad was an organ grinder. You know what an organ grinder is?
That is a term that I've heard, but not one I'm familiar with.
The hurdy-gurdy man who he plays a musical instrument and has a little monkey dance around.
Wow.
Well, monkeys are really difficult to insure. I don't know if you know that, Adam. You probably don't follow the monkey insurance trends.
Yeah, it's been a while.
But at least it was in the 80s. I can't speak to monkey insurance today. So I would dance around and ask for money. My dad then joined the circus. I dropped out of high school, went to a lovely Catholic high school here in the Twin Cities called Hill Murray. And I left high school to ride the elephant. So this is all true. So we were in a traveling circus. The circus's name was Circus Flora. Flora was the elephant. I rode the elephant, and my dad was the organ grinder. We had the Flying Walendas with us. We ever heard of the Flying Walendas?
No.
Oh, they're a high wire act. So there's this guy named Nick Walenda. He's pretty famous over the last decade or so. You remember there was a guy who like walked across
the tightropes.
The tightrope guy.
Yes.
So he and I were in the circus together.
Wow.
Yeah. So isn't that a normal growing up story? Wasn't everybody in the circus when they were 15?
No.
No.
And then the Bahamas.
So I lived in the Bahamas just for a year. I taught high school religion and was coach of the national champion soccer team, the boys' high school soccer team.
That is like the plot of a like straight to video Disney movie.
Unfortunately, that's the problem. Is it's straight to video. Nobody watches video anymore.
When you start doing this program, right? You talked about that you're doing the mass, and then they say, "Hey, you want to be on camera." How much of it for you was like this acknowledgement of, I need to make this interesting for people because there is a lack of entertainment value or interest in what we're doing right now, just with the typical mass?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so I'm a Generation Xer, and we called the TV show Generation Cross because Generation X is like meaningless. And when you take the X and tip it on its side, it becomes a cross, and then you find meaning in the cross. And my whole premise was, what if we made a TV show that people would actually watch, but it was about religion? And what if it wasn't so much about learning the faith or saving souls, but being entertaining? So my number one goal was just that. Like, what if the priest and I were cooking and all you took away from it was a good recipe? What if we did something like that? And what if all you did was see priests not as, well, they're kind of weird, but what if you saw priests as just regular guys, and this is how God has called them to serve? And that was my main premise, was what if religion wasn't this strange, weird thing, even if you want to go strange, since I am a strange, weird thing. But what if religion wasn't so different, and the priests, the nuns, the lay people we had just on the show were just people you went to high school with, or people you went to college with, or people you work with, and faith means something to their lives. Maybe it means everything in their lives, but they're not weird. And religion has always, for some reason, been associated with weirdness. And I wanted to kind of break those stereotypes and break those trends on that TV show. And I try to do that on my radio show too.
Was there a feeling, and then we'll move forward, because I'm still just so fascinated by your path. Was there a feeling when you started at WCCO, like, we are breaking barriers here, or I am trying to do something that hasn't been done before? What was that time like? Do you remember?
I remember it so well because the program director at the time was Italian, and he said, Italian-American, and he said, I want to make you an offer that hopefully you can't refuse.
Nice.
And it was so strange because I always wanted to work in TV, and I love religion, and I don't just love my faith, but I love all faiths. And I thought, oh, that would be really cool, even if strange. I'd never been at a Seder meal before, so me calling local rabbis and being like, hey, I know Passover's coming. Would you let me and a crew come in and make a Seder meal for me, and I'll eat a bitter herb? I mean, I don't know. I never had a bitter herb. Turns out they're really bitter, and I don't recommend it at all. But the fellow reporters, the anchors at the station, I think we're all like, what is going on here? What are we doing? And I think there's still a disconnect to this day with religion and broadcasting. And I think there's a disconnect between religion and the enormous role it plays in a lot of people's lives. And we're all living in this weird misunderstanding of what a separation of church and state means, as if faith isn't something that's totally a part of so many people's lives. And it's like only professional athletes get to say all glory to God. Right? Like if you score a touchdown, you're like, I'm just giving God all the glory. But if you make a good hot dog and you say give all the glory, they're like, there's a separation of church and hot dogs here. Let's be honest. Let's not put these things together, shall we? So it's like, I think even when I was at Channel 4, the stories I would do, they would be like, and our soul man, Lino Rulli, is now going to do we're going to waste another 4 minutes talking about religion, and he's going to be screwing around, and he's going to be telling jokes, and he's not dressed like a reporter. I never wore a shirt and tie or anything like that.
Yeah.
And I was just going and telling people stories of faith, and I think there was not a dislike for it, but a disconnect. How is this news? And my answer always was, how big a role faith plays in the community. And while car crashes are certainly important to cover, and I'm not saying they're not, they don't really apply to everybody's life, but faith applies to almost everybody's life. Because even if you don't have it, you know about it, and you know people who have it.
You start your XM show when?
2006, so this will be 20 years this fall.
What has the last 20 years of your life been like doing that?
A blur. So Howard Stern went to Sirius Satellite Radio in 2005, and he made satellite radio a thing. And I bought a satellite radio to listen to Howard Stern because he was a New York guy, and he was in a bunch of cities. He played here in Minnesota for about 6 months, and the KQ Morning Show beat him, and they removed him, and they flipped the format to, I don't know, country music or something like that. But to me, he and Rush Limbaugh were the two biggest influences in radio. Not just influences for me, I mean influencers in radio. And so I bought a satellite radio for Howard Stern. Now, unbeknownst to me, the same guy who brought Howard to Sirius Satellite Radio then was trying to say we should do something different. What about a Catholic channel? And so like the company wants to be everything for everybody. You like Howard, you like sports, you like religion, you like opera, you like Fish. I don't know. Do you like Fish, Adam? You know,
are we talking the band?
Yeah, the band,
the jam band.
Yeah.
I dabble in some Fish.
Like they have their own channel. You know what I mean? And you go, oh, for the love of somebody wants to listen to Fish all day. Doesn't that concert go long enough? You got to have a Fish channel.
Well, All Day for Fish is actually just like 3 songs too. So.
Yeah, but nobody knows because each song's a day and a half. So they were creating the Catholic channel, and they invited me to go to New York. And they asked if I was interested. Now, I always saw myself as a TV guy, not a radio guy. Ugly aside, I felt like, wait a second. I'd won a handful of Emmy Awards. This has been what my thing is. I like this thing. I had just executive produced a World War II documentary for WCCO at the time that had done pretty well in the ratings and the awards, and we were looking to produce more documentaries for CBS, for WCCO, or if we ever wanted them. So this was very weird for me, but I was like, you're going to give me a free trip to New York, put me up in a hotel, I can see where Howard Stern works, whatever. And I went, and they were like, we want you on the air. And I go, well, I'm not a radio guy. And the guy said, I'll teach you how to do radio. And he was basically like a Yoda of radio. He's just an old, knowledgeable guy. And I thought, that is just so weird. And I never saw it coming. And sometimes in my life, God has to surprise me to actually get me interested. So he has to surprise me for me to pay attention. And this came out of the blue. And the whole thing was so strange. I thought this whole thing has to be from God, because why would I do something like, I'm a Minnesota guy who was working in TV, moved to New York, and become a radio guy. But they offered me the afternoon drive shift on this thing called the Catholic channel, and I thought, you know, it's kind of weird that this big multi-billion-dollar company wants religion at the table. And if they think I've got something to offer, and if they think I've got something to say, and they gave me a guaranteed contract. So even I said, well, so if you fire me, I'm going to get paid. They were like, yeah. I go, geez, well, fire me right away then, because this is going to be great. I'm going to get paid to live in New York. 20 years in, they still haven't fired me.
Was there an element for you, though, where it's like, okay, now I've got to fill this time, and I have to make it interesting. I have to get people on board, because guaranteed contract aside, you're still thinking like, I have to produce some sort of results for these guys. And what was that point for you where like, man, people are actually listening to this. Like I've got this down. I've got my bread and butter. Like I know what I am and I know what this is. How long did that take for you to get to that?
Still waiting. But I'm hoping that on our 20th anniversary, I'm hoping this is the year that things really start clicking. I remember very well a few months into the show that one of the executives of the company, we were at a Christmas party, and said, I was listening to your show today. And I thought, oh, God, here we go. And she goes, you're a really good storyteller. And the only reason I told a story is a guest canceled. and I panicked, and I didn't have anything to do. My guest canceled, and it was probably just some boring author. To this day, I don't even know who it was. And I panicked and just told the personal story. And here's this executive going, "That was really good." And I thought, really? You liked that? That was just me. That you think people will pay for just me talking about myself? And that was the first step of me telling stories. And even though they're about me, I don't think of it as an egotistical thing. I think of it as a good time filler. So it's like, okay, I could have some guest on who wrote some book that nobody's ever heard of and nobody really cares about. Or I could tell a personal story about prayer. I could tell a personal story about times I felt God in my life or I felt God very far away from me. I could talk about what it's like growing up Catholic, and suddenly people are like, I relate to this guy. Not because I was in the circus or because I've had sort of a strange life, but by telling and being vulnerable. Now, this is something I learned actually from all the years listening to the Howard Stern show, is being vulnerable and being myself and talking about things that I'd never heard anybody talk about on a religious platform. Like, I struggle with my relationship with God. I struggle with faith. I go to confession. You know, there's nothing more embarrassing in the world than going to confession. And it turns out there's nothing funnier because people love a good confession story. Well, nobody's out there telling stories of confession. Maybe people are saying, oh, it's very important to go to the sacrament of reconciliation. You know, but you never know what it's like until you're standing in line judging the old ladies in front of you going, oh, they haven't done anything bad like I've done. This priest is going to throw up when he hears what I have to say. And telling stories was when I started to realize I've got a hook. And this is what I'm going to do with my career is I'm going to be a storyteller, and I'm not going to wait for guests to fill with, 2-3 hours a day. You got to have guests, but I'm not going to wait for them to be the hook. I'm going to see if I can be the hook, because the one thing each of us has that nobody else can fulfill in this world is what God has given us, ourselves. So I can only be me, but that's the one thing God made me, is to be me. So don't hide that under a bushel basket. Let's celebrate that.
With that said, though, in last thing career-wise, there's some stuff I want to get into, which is Catholicism in general. But
I don't like talking about Catholicism. I don't know. I forgot to mention that before we started. I got to talk about the religion stuff too.
Yeah.
Oh, I just like talking about me, Adam.
Well, then you'll love this next question. Was there a moment for you though in your career where you're like, you go from I know who these people are, and I'm reaching out to them to say, I want to talk to you, to where like people start knowing who you are, or you are peers with some of the people within the church that are higher up. And what was that like for you to adjust to that shift in your life, where you go from being a reporter who's trying to get access to people to all of a sudden you are a person who people might be looking up to or might be looking at as a peer? What was that like for you?
God forbid anybody ever looks up to me or looks at me. So like something we do every year on this show is a rite of adulthood, if you will, in the Catholic Church is becoming confirmed in the faith. So kids usually do it in their junior year of high school. It could be their 8th grade, and it could be somewhere in there. So it's somewhere in their teenage years to become confirmed in the faith. And every year for the last 11 years, I'm a confirmation sponsor for a listener. Kids email the show, and they're in the running. They explain to me why they think I should be their confirmation sponsor. Why should they be my sponsee? And the only thing I always make sure is I'm like, that's fine, but don't look up to me. Just, I'm a sinner like everybody else. So I happen to have a platform. I happen to maybe have been around the Catholic Church for a long time, and maybe I know people or something like that, but don't look at me as any different, because I'm you. I just happen to have a radio show. But I'm a sinner. I'm in the confessional line like you. I've got my doubts in religion. I got my doubts in faith. I wonder why God does what he does, and sometimes I wonder where God is at all. So I'm happy to be on the journey with you, but I never want you to look at me as somebody that's got it all figured out or is different than where you're at. And I look at that for the entire audience. I use the example of the confirmation kid just so that it's like, and now I've been at this so long, I hear from kids all the time that are no longer kids. Yeah. They're adults. And they've been listening to me their whole life. They don't know a world without Lino in it, and that's a very scary thought. Yeah. But I go, this is, at that point, an honor. And I think that's just getting older, is at first it was ego-driven, and now it's service-driven. And so now it's like, what can I do to be of service to somebody else? What can I do to help somebody's relationship with God? What can I do to help remove some obstacles between them and God? And I understand the audience being so much bigger than 20 years ago. I thought practicing Catholics were listening to the show, and they were, and they are. But now I have a much bigger audience to serve, and that's everybody. So now it's like, well, am I entertaining enough to hold you as a listener, even if you're not Catholic, even if you're not Christian? Can I hold you as a listener just through storytelling or the show itself?
I want to ask about Catholicism. Is Catholicism having a moment right now in the year 2026? It feels like we watched maybe, I don't want to say decline, but you start to see an aging Catholic population. And now you're seeing with Gen Z just a surge in new Catholics or people who are Catholic converts who never practiced and are now coming into Catholicism. The numbers that we've seen for, what do they call it, the RCIA or the initiation into Catholicism are growing locally, nationally, and globally. What are we seeing right now with Catholicism?
That's what I want to find out. I wish you could explain to me that. Could you do a story on this or something? Because somebody's got to figure this out. Here's what's great is there has been a decline in Catholicism. Let me say it differently. That's not great. Yeah. But in the last 20 years, there's absolutely been a decline in Catholicism. And it's not like, and this is so Catholic, it's not like 5 years ago the bishops got together and said, let's run TV commercials or let's make a program. Like nobody did anything. And suddenly, like hundreds of thousands of adults, I mean, people who should know better, quite frankly, are becoming Catholic. And you go, well, what on earth? I remember thinking how funny this is as a born and raised Catholic back in like the 80s and 90s. I learned about this thing called the RCIA, the Rite of Christian Initiation for Adults. And it's like adults go through, you could almost call it CCD class or Sunday school. And they learn all about and they pray all about the faith, and then they become Catholic. And for some reason, the numbers just went crazy this year. And as you say, it's not just a local thing. It's not even just a national thing. It's a global thing. And it's not a program, and it wasn't a plan, and everybody's surprised, and the honest ones are confused because we don't know what is going on with Catholicism right now. I'm confused that suddenly so many people want to become Catholic, and I go, did you read the fine print? It's really a thing, you know. Like it's going to be a whole thing in your life, and I mean, there are studies that have now been done because, of course, somebody wants to take credit. And so there's been studies that have been done. Is this the Pope Leo effect? Is this something about – I think there's something to be said for – now, I've done a few conclaves. So I've been in Rome for the election of Benedict XVI. I was there for his election in 2005. I was there for the election of Francis in 2013. And I was there for the election of Leo just last year. And there's absolutely – the world's attention is suddenly on the papacy. The world's attention is on the Catholic Church. Anderson Cooper once said to me, we were doing CNN at the time, and off the air he goes, hey, never lose that white smoke thing. That's really a good thing you guys got going on. You got everybody's attention all at the same time. And the pageant, I think he used the word pageantry, like the pageantry you got, everything you're doing, don't lose this. And I was thinking, we aren't. You know, that wasn't the plan was never to lose this. But I do think suddenly the world's attention is on it, and the fact that we have an American Pope and somebody who's from Chicago and he likes the White Sox and he eats hot dogs and he's just so Midwestern, if you will, that is perhaps something that gets people's attention, and maybe people start looking more into what is this religion? There's just a billion of us. There's 1.3 billion of us out there, and you go. I think people start asking questions. What is this religion? What is it beyond the white smoke? What is it beyond the men wearing outfits? What is it about just the fact that it's only dudes? Like, what is it about this religion that I think it's very likely some people were asking questions a year ago, and they started asking questions and getting answers in these programs. And next thing you know, we've got more Catholics than we've ever had coming into the church.
Have you ever thought about what your life would be like without your Catholic faith?
Oh, wouldn't that be great? Sunday mornings are just freed up, aren't they? They just free right up on you.
Do you golf? You could golf.
No, I hate golf. Golf's the worst thing. And the only thing more frustrating than Catholicism is golf. Who wants to golf? I've golfed before. Believe me, it makes me believe there is no God. You ever golfed?
Yeah,
it's so tough.
It's humbling.
It's a train wreck.
Yeah.
I don't like it at all.
Yeah.
I like that Tiger Woods. I don't even know the rest of them, honestly. Who won the Masters this year?
Oh, I should know this. Rory,
although the Irish guy, right?
Yes,
Oh, yeah, he
yes.
won back-to-back. All right. And then that's the only thing that annoys me more are people who are good at golf.
Yeah.
How dare they? So it's like that. The beauty of Catholicism is nobody's good at it. We're all practicing. You see, somebody wins in like the Masters. Somebody wins in golf. And Catholicism, everybody's bad at it. And I like that about Catholicism. What would my life be without it? I would say it would be a train wreck instead of the small 5-car derailment we currently see in my life. So like my life is a mess, but without the guardrails of Catholicism, without the right and wrong of Catholicism, my moral compass is broken. I need a Godhead. I need a deity. I need an organized institutional something to tell me right from wrong. My instincts are not to forgive my neighbor, or love my neighbor, excuse me. My instincts are not to forgive my enemy. My instincts are not to love my God with all my heart, my mind, my soul, my strength, and my neighbor as myself. Those aren't my instincts. And I think to become Catholic, to be a Christian, I mean, you can't do it without God's grace, but it gives my life meaning, but it doesn't solve everything. Now, I know people who it's like they became Christian and they got rich and their pants fit them better and everything. Like, I don't know. That's not my life. My pants fit fine. Don't get me wrong. Don't take it the wrong way. But it's like my life wasn't fixed when I gave my life to God. And it wasn't a one-time thing. Every day I give my life to God. Every day you got to wake up, say your prayers. Every day you got to roll out of bed and get on your knees and thank God for the day and pray for doing the right thing. And I'm still a very selfish guy, and I'm still a very egotistical guy, and I'm still a guy who thinks about myself before I think about others. And I would hate to think what kind of jerk I would be without Catholicism, because I'm a big enough jerk with it.
Is the Pope soft on crime?
Very weak. He's very weak. I don't know. It's weird. I put a tweet out like that a few weeks ago. Nobody cared, and somebody else brought it up. He is weak on crime. I will admit. Popes have always been weak on crime.
We've seen, though, with Pope Leo, and then even prior to that, the social issues of our world are now kind of becoming intertwined with the church. Whether it's talking about what have you, any number of social issues where it feels like people want the Pope's take or the Pope's guidance on it. How important is this moment in time, even as we're looking at all the turmoil around us, to have that sort of leadership from the top of the Catholic Church, would you say?
It's important so long as people understand it the opposite way of the way it's been experienced the last few weeks. The Pope's job is to speak the truth, the truth as he understands it, let's say. Okay, obviously people are going to disagree when it comes to what truth is. Mm-hmm. And that's going to be a struggle in Christianity because Pontius Pilate 2,000 years ago asked, what is truth? So people are going to debate what truth is. The Pope's job is to say, as far as the Catholic Church understands it, as far as the faith of Jesus Christ is passed down for 2,000 years, has been given to us, here's the truth. Now, that doesn't put a person against another person. It shouldn't make us enemies. It should make us collaborators in the truth and understand we're going to disagree with what truth is. But I think people look for a moral voice and look for clarity. Now, what's funny is I know a lot of people who are like, yeah, way to go, Pope Leo, because they don't like President Trump. And then the Pope will say something else and they go, well, you should stay in your lane. In other words, the Pope will say a lot of things and they're never in one political lane. It's not against a Republican or against a Democrat or for a Republican or for a Democrat or whatever independents are. And so the Pope needs to speak the truth and do so in truth, in love, in charity. And I think people appreciate it, but people seem to really like it when it's stuff they agree with and less so when the Pope says something and go, well, I don't think the Pope needs to talk about that topic right now.
One of the last things I want to ask is you talked about the disconnect that existed even 20 years ago between what we talk about in media and culture and then what people are experiencing, in their faith. There's not necessarily that connection there. Those things are kind of separate. Does it still feel to you like there is that? And how do we begin to bridge the gap between what we experience now? It's not just TV or radio, it's social media, it's, the constant news alerts we're getting. How do we bridge the gap between that and what we are experiencing in reality? Does that make sense?
It does. I mean, religion is a part of so many people's lives. That is just a statement of fact. Now, you could say it's less and less, but if you ask even the number of people who are religious, the number of people who are spiritual, the number of people who believe in God, the numbers are still really high, higher than a lot of other things in society. More people are into spirituality than even sports, and nothing's bigger than sports. Look at the NFL draft, right? It's something you get hundreds of thousands of people to show up and be like, oh, I can't wait for the 37th pick. And you're like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
But faith plays an enormous role in so many people's lives, but I think there's still something, and it's a very healthy American sentiment to always want to try to keep the church, and by church I mean religion, not just like one church or the Catholic Church or something, separate from the rest of our lives. I think that's a healthy thing that we want to have, but it's not a realistic thing that we actually have. And I think there's a certain boldness that I think comes more from athletes, musicians, the well-known people who say, I want to talk about my faith. My faith energizes my life, and I'm not going to stuff it down your throat, but it's something that is an essential part of who I am. I think Mark Wahlberg is perhaps one of the people who does it best. I've been lucky to have Mark on my show a few times and get to know him a little bit. I think he's somebody who does it really well. There are very few bigger names in Hollywood. There are a few bigger A-list stars, right, who are also very articulate and passionate about their faith, but he doesn't turn anybody off. And I think the more people in society who are able to articulate and be passionate about faith without anybody else feeling threatened. Nobody in Hollywood feels threatened like, oh, that Mark Wahlberg's going to beat me up if I don't wear municipal clothing and go to church with him. And yet he's still able to speak passionately about what he believes in and still be passionate about his career. I think that is the example we're going to see more and more. And those of us of faith to never be offended or slighted, or if somebody is not interested in religion and wants to speak just as passionately about their atheism or their lack of spirituality, and to say we're all on this planet together and we are all in this thing together. So while it's my job as a Catholic to evangelize, which simply means to tell people about Jesus, that doesn't mean all my friends believe in Jesus. And that's certainly not the truth in my family, and it's not the truth in my relationships. And that's just a normal part of life. I think we need to be better as a society, and I think that means in media, and I think that means in politics, and I think it means everywhere to recognize each other's differences and to celebrate each other's faiths.
How long do you want to keep doing what you're doing right now?
I'm talking to you?
No, just your show, your what you do. I mean, I don't know if you consider it a ministry, or if you would describe it that way, but how long do you want to keep at this for?
This is my life now. I've been doing this for 20 years. Sirius XM fires me tomorrow. I'm going to do what everybody else does. Get a podcast. So, I mean, that's
nice.
That's it. This is what I do. But I talk about God in a sometimes hopefully humorous way. Yeah. And this is in my DNA now. And I've been lucky enough to build an audience. And they're in my life and I'm in their lives. And I wouldn't let that end even if you fire me, because I want to be in people's lives, and I'm lucky enough to let people let me into their lives, and I want to keep doing that. And so I do other things that I'm passionate about, and I lead pilgrimages, and I write books, and I do other things, but ultimately, as you've noticed now, I talk, and you just can't seem to shut me up.
How can people find you, get connected with you, get plugged in with the work that you're doing?
So CatholicGuide.com is my website. I'm on the air 3 to 5 Central Time every day, 5 days a week on the Catholic channel on Sirius XM satellite radio.
Awesome. Lino, thank you for your time. It's been awesome to learn just about your life, but also just to hear your insights on the way things are going right now.
Yeah, if I said anything interesting, let me know.
Lino, thank you for joining us.
You bet.
Thank you again so much for listening to Bigger Than Belief. Again, that was such a fun conversation. One more time, I'm going to push you. If you like that episode at all, please share it with a friend. Especially, I think anyone who's Catholic would really love to hear from Lino and just hear his story. Once more, if you haven't given us a 5-star rating and you've made it this far in the show, please take just a couple of seconds to do just that, whether you're listening in Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you're listening. And if you haven't followed us, please do just that. You could also follow me by searching my name, Adam Duxter, on any social media platform. We'll be right back next Thursday, as we always are, with another brand new episode. We're already in the month of June, folks. We're coming up on 6 months of this project. For now, be well, and we'll see you very soon.
Love podcasts? Love Minnesota?
Check out the WCCO podcast studio lineup.
Hear the top stories of the day with 4 things to know.
Discover top female athletes and teams from around the state on Women in Sports.
Dive into stories about faith and belief, from your local leaders to your neighbors next door, with Bigger Than Belief.
Stay in the know on the go with the WCCO podcast studio. Go to WCCO.com/podcasts.